Hi guys, it's me, Shazza HD, and welcome back to the first live stream on the channel, I think since the last Grand Prix of 2025. It might be maybe a few days after we did a live stream, I can't honestly remember. But yeah, it's been, 7 weeks, I think, since the last live stream here on the channel, and since the end of the 2025 Formula 1 season. And now we are properly getting into the 2026 season. A complete reset of the regulations, new power units, new aero, new active aero. Formula 1 is massively different in 2026, as you can see on the screen with the pictures of the cars who have been running in the last few days around Barcelona, around the Circuit de Catalunya. Not all the teams, obviously, have been running this week, and we'll get into why that is in a moment. But, yeah, it's been, what do you call it? It's been an interesting week, let's put it that way, in terms of seeing, the reliability of certain power units, who's done well so far. And also, there's been some interesting stories that have come about with certain teams so far in this shakedown test. The shakedown, by the way, at the Circuit de Catalunya has officially finished. It finished about 2 hours ago, I think. So the shakedown is over. The next time you will see these cars is for the first official pre-season test in Bahrain, which is in 2 weeks from now. It starts in just under 2 weeks' time. So what we're going to be doing in this stream, not going to be that long of a stream, considering there's not an absolute ton of stuff really to talk about. We're going to be looking at the new cars, the pictures on the screen, and also I'm going to go through a couple of important bits of data, really looking at, in terms of laps completed, not just what teams have been quite reliable, but looking at by power unit, who has been able to get the most laps on the board so far in 2026. And then we will go team by team, and I will just do a quick roundup of pretty much how their week has gone, and really what the news is at the moment with all 11, of course, Formula 1 teams. Of course, you must remember there is a new team on the grid in 2026 in Cadillac, who have had an okay start in terms of what they've been doing, but, in terms of performance, who knows at this point. But great to see you guys for the first time in 2026. Sorry if my throat doesn't sound great. It's winter and I've got a bit of a sore throat, so apologies about that. But the weather is absolutely horrendous at the minute, and I've been going out and mingling with, the public, if that makes sense, by, going outside of the house. So that's probably where I've got it from. So my voice not in the greatest condition, so apologies about that, but should be okay enough to get through this stream. Also, with the bottom ticker, as you can see, I've got a new graphic for the bottom of the screen there, where you can see the text running along. When it comes to the championship standings from last year, please do remember that I haven't updated the championship standings to reflect what the official final standings were after the final race. I think the positions are all basically correct, but it's just the points in terms of who finished on what amount of points is, I think, incorrect. So apologies about that, but I didn't have a lot of time to get this stream ready. Been quite busy with uni. Just begun my second semester in the last couple of weeks, so I'm concentrating a lot on that. But excited to go, to get into this, because obviously 2026 is such a reset of everything in Formula 1. And the most exciting thing is, even though this shakedown has finished, we've only got 5 weeks until the first race, and that is a very short amount of time, really, given that in February we're going to have 2 pre-season tests. The 2 tests being in Bahrain, 3 days long for both tests. And then once we finish pre-season testing on the 20th of February, I think it's another 2 weeks after that will be in Melbourne, first weekend of March for the first Grand Prix. So the first Grand Prix is very, very close. It'll be here just like that. It will absolutely whiz by. But yeah, in terms of tonight's stream, like I said, what we're going to be looking at is visually what the cars look like, and also going through a couple bits of data, and then I'll do a quick roundup of the teams and what the big news is with all the teams. Not just coming out of the shakedown, but just what they've, what's been going on with all the teams in the last couple weeks or so. So I think firstly, we'll start with, in terms of looking at these new cars, let me just go back. And we'll start with the Mercedes car. Mercedes have been the most impressive of testing so far. They've completed, I think as a team, the most amount of laps, way more laps than they were hoping to complete. And they actually did so well in completing so many laps that they actually got to start working on the setup, which is remarkable in terms of how early they've been able to get on with that. One thing can I say, though, about these new cars, which I really like, and if you're a Formula One fan, you've been a fan of Formula One, say, for the last 20, maybe just over 20 years, these front wings, if I go back to that Mercedes picture, and even this picture kind of shows it as well, the front wings look so much better than what it used to look like, obviously, last year. Last year's front wings were a lot wider. Obviously, the cars were bigger. The front wings and just the shape of the cars looks a lot more right in terms of how it should look. In terms of the shape and even the front wings, it looks a lot more like the mid to late 2000s before we had that regulation change in 2009. And those type of cars were some of the most enjoyable cars to drive, according to, drivers that have been racing for the last 15, 20 years. So it's good to see that we're moving in that direction in terms of the way the cars are. And I think even George Russell, after one of the shakedown days, said that for the drivers, it's going to be a lot more testing for them in terms of they will have to have a lot more and will have a lot more influence on the performance of the car, which is what we want to see at the end of the day. That's when, we're going to see the best drivers actually get more of what they deserve. So in terms of the way these cars look, again, it looks a lot more like it should, and good to see that we are moving in the right direction. In terms of the sound of the new power units, they do sound a tad louder probably than they were with the old power units from last year, but it's not really that different, to be honest. Obviously we won't know until they're at full pelt, in 5 weeks, but it does seem like they're maybe a slight bit louder than they were in 2025, so that's a good thing. But yeah, the Mercedes car looks nice, and they've had a very good shakedown in Barcelona. If any team has won the shakedown test in Barcelona, it's been them. They have been absolutely brilliant in terms of the laps they've done, and what do you call it? Being able to work on the setup as well of the car already is just absolutely brilliant from Mercedes' point of view. Let's go on to, though, the other cars. Here's the McLaren. This is a bit of a closer up shot of the McLaren. Looks very aggressive looking, the McLaren. And if we look at this picture, let me just scroll up a bit. I really do like the look of this McLaren. Obviously, this livery, this is a testing livery. This is not the actual livery that McLaren are going to be running. But again, if you look at that front wing, it looks a lot better and narrower, which it should be, compared to what we used to have. The only complaint with the front wing is still the end fences are a bit too extended from the front wing. I'd like if it was a lot more closer in. But yeah, the McLaren, in terms of looks nice. McLaren have completed quite a number of laps. I think Lando Norris today did 80 laps in the McLaren. So in terms of reliability, the Mercedes power unit is looking very, very, very good when it comes to reliability. In terms of power, who knows? I mean, Mercedes are probably going to be able to push harder sooner than other manufacturers because they've already proven with their power units to be so reliable. So that's a good sign for the Mercedes-powered teams. But yeah, the McLaren looks nice. Here's another picture of the McLaren. It does actually look quite nice with this black livery. Kind of reminds me of those black McLarens that Kimi Räikkönen used to drive. What was it, mid-2000s? Obviously, the Mika Hakkinen McLarens as well. But yeah, this is not the final livery of the McLaren. And you can see here, I think that's the number 1 on the McLaren there for Lando Norris. First time the number 1 has been on a McLaren since 2010, when Jenson Button, the world champion, moved to McLaren. So, 16 years. Here's the Ferrari Ferrari car. In terms of livery, I really... hold on, let me just go back there. Let me go back another picture. Yeah, in terms of the livery, I really don't like the Ferrari car. Too much white on it, and the HP logo is just absolutely everywhere on this Ferrari car. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of the livery. In terms of Ferrari, they've had I'd say as positive a shakedown as really they could have had. Their engine has been reliable. They've done, in terms of not just for them, but their customer teams, which are Cadillac and Haas. Yeah, they've been pretty reliable. I think over the entire shakedown, the Ferrari engine, not just in the back of the works car, but also the customer cars, did just under 1,000 laps over the last 5 days. So, in terms of reliability, Ferrari are looking pretty good when it comes to that. Whether the engine is actually quick, whether the aero is good, again, we don't know. But reliability-wise, Ferrari are looking strong, which is certainly a lot better than they were looking with the last time we had a big engine change with the regulations back in 2014. Ferrari definitely started this one stronger than they did 2014 in terms of reliability. So yeah, the Ferrari is another picture, and yeah, I just don't like I just think there's too much white on this car. The front end of the Ferrari looks nice, but the rest of it, once you see the Ferrari side on, I think you kind of can see it here. Yeah, there's just too much white, and then you got the HP logo in there as well. It just does not look good. And I got to say, in terms of the quality of the livery, probably one of the worst Ferrari liveries that I've seen in the last 20 years. It really does not look nice. Maybe, will that reflect how they do this year? Who knows? But it just does not look nice, the livery. Let's go on to Red Bull, though. Red Bull, if you look at their livery, if we go back to it, and maybe I could get a better... Yeah, this kind of shows it. It's a bit more the Red Bull livery of what you would see with the old Red Bull cars back in the V8 era. They've gone away from those matted liveries, and it's a lot more. The blue is a lot brighter on the Red Bull. So yeah, it does kind of is kind of reminiscent, especially with this pitch. You can kind of see it a bit more reminiscent of those Red Bull cars in the first few years of the 2010s. Red Bull, though, have had also a good shakedown. Obviously, they've got the Red Bull / Ford powertrains, and they've ran well. They've been pretty reliable, I think, compared to what the expectations were. They did lose quite a bit of track time. I think, was it a day or two ago, because Max went off into the gravel, and then Isaac Hadjar had quite a big crash into, I think, turn 10 or something like that. So that wasn't great. But in terms of reliability, looking good. Whether the performance is there in the engine, who knows? But at least the reliability appears to be there. So Red Bull have got a decent start with their power units, which is good to see. Now let's go on to, this is the Racing Bulls car, obviously also powered by the Red Bull / Ford powertrains. The livery, not great, to be honest. It's basically last year's livery, just fitted into, obviously, the way these cars look for 2026. Racing Bulls have been absolutely fine. We've barely seen any clips of them on the circuit, so yeah, we'll see what they do in other days. This car, though, I believe, yeah, it is. I think this is the Cadillac, the first ever Cadillac Formula One car. Not many shots of it. Here's a shot of it coming out of the pit lane, and then here's a shot of it. This is Sergio Perez, who was driving this car. Let me just go back to it. Was driving the car at Silverstone for a initial shakedown when the car was revealed. Obviously, they're not going to... this is not their final livery. This is just a testing livery for now. Yeah, Cadillac have been okay. Some teething issues, but in terms of the Ferrari power unit, I don't think there's really any real proper reliability problems. So, yeah, Cadillac have been absolutely fine. Of course, nobody cares about performance at this point. No one's going to know anything about that. So, as long as Cadillac can get some good running in, which it looks like they have, then, yeah, they look absolutely fine. And now we move on to this, which is the Honda-powered, Adrian Newey-designed Aston Martin. A very aggressive-looking Aston Martin car, which has caught the eye of a lot of the technical people in the media. People who like to analyse the cars in terms of the aerodynamic side. It's caused quite a bit of chatter, let's say, this Aston Martin design. The big problem, though, is they've not done a lot of running on track, because the Honda engine has been quite unreliable in this shakedown. Here's another picture of it coming out of the pit lane. Yeah, they've, down the pit straight, they've had to run the engine in a conservative mode to not, blow it to bits, and to make sure they could get a bit more out of, or get a bit more laps in, rather than taking a big risk. But yeah, not a lot of laps completed, and they only did the final couple days of the shakedown, so they were slightly late compared to, I think, what they originally were planning. So, yeah, not great for Aston Martin. And from what I'm hearing from people, media, certain journalists who have been at the circuit, the feeling with Aston Martin is they've probably got a good car in terms of the aero and the chassis, but it does appear that Honda have fucked up once again, just like they did back in 2015. Probably not to that level like they did in 2015, but we might see this Aston Martin being a car that, again, in the corners is very good, but just doesn't have the reliability or maybe quite the straight line speed to, be consistently competitive. That's the initial feeling I've seen coming away from the shakedown, but Honda might have a much stronger first pre-season test in Bahrain, so we'll have to see. Yeah, this is the Aston Martin, of course, not the proper livery yet. That will be revealed soon enough. Here's the Alpine, the Mercedes-powered Alpine. Alpine, yeah, done running. They've been fine. Obviously, the Mercedes engine has been quite reliable. They've done their running, and no real noises coming out of the team. They sound absolutely okay with what's gone on so far. Livery, of course, is, well, the same as last year. So, yeah, that's the Alpine. Here's the Haas, which, of course, is Ferrari-powered. And here's another picture of it, I think, going through turn 10 or 11. And, yeah, Ferrari engines, as I said, proving quite reliable so far. So Haas have had a decent test. And then, finally, the Audi, the first ever Audi Formula One car. But I must say, even though, yes, it's only a shakedown test, it's not been the greatest shakedown for Audi. They have been one of the most unreliable teams and manufacturers so far. I will just go through quickly the official figures in terms of the completed laps. So these figures I'm about to read off, these are laps completed by power unit. And this is for the entire of the shakedown from Monday to today. So the Mercedes-powered teams in total completed 1,134 laps. The Ferrari-powered cars, 991 laps. Pretty good. Red Bull powertrain / Ford, 624 laps. I think Red Bull will be incredibly happy with that. I think they would have been incredibly happy if they've only just got to 500 laps, but 624, very impressive. And then you got Audi, 240, not bad, but not, compared to their competitors, not great at all. And then Honda, 66 laps. Now, obviously, we must remember that Aston Martin only did running today and yesterday, so there were other days where more running could have maybe been done, but not a great start for Honda with that power unit. But yeah, Mercedes, Ferrari, and the Ford / Red Bull powertrains in terms of reliability, good start for Audi and Honda, and definitely Honda, not so much. And in terms of lap times, because I know you guys, even though we know lap times don't mean anything, I will just quickly inform you that the fastest lap time of the entire shakedown was set by Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari, a 1:16.3. If you're wondering, for comparison's sake, what that or how that compares to the pole position at this same track from last year, it's about 5 seconds off the pace. And these 2026 cars, let me just check. I think they're supposed to be a couple seconds off the pace compared to last year. Let me just have a quick look to confirm that. Hold on a sec. And yeah, 2026 cars are projected to be 1 to 2.5 seconds per lap slower than the 2025 cars. And that is primarily due to the 30% reduction in aerodynamic downforce and 55% less drag. So, there you go. That is why the they are slower for this year. So yeah, 5 seconds off the pace. What type of lap time are they going to do at this track when we come here in, I think late June is when we come to this Grand Prix at the Circuit de Catalunya? I would imagine they'll be doing, at best, probably a mid 1 minute 13, maybe a low 113. Somewhere in the 113s is probably what I think they'll be doing at best with these cars. I'd be amazed if they did a 1 minute 12 for pole position with these cars. So in terms of, the running we saw today, obviously we have to account for the colder temperatures, which obviously don't help. So they were probably, when Lewis Hamilton did that lap, he was probably running with a few laps of fuel, and the power unit was probably turned down a bit. Not a lot, but, enough to not stress things properly. And then, like I said, out of probably a few laps of fuel on board, plus the colder temperatures, and there you go, 1:16.3, which is probably going to be 2 to probably 3 seconds at most slower than what pole position will be at the same track in, 5 months from now? So, not that slow, the lap times. Not far away, probably, you would argue, from what the lap times will probably be when we get to, practice 1 or even practice 2 for the, Spanish Grand Prix in a few months. But, yeah, still quite a bit off the pace of, pushing as hard as you possibly can. So, yeah, just want to clarify that for anyone who thinks, oh, Ferrari have got the fastest car, lap times don't matter. Remember, the last time we had a shakedown test here at this track was at the start of the 2022 regulations. And who was quickest at the end of that shakedown? Mercedes. And then Mercedes went on to unveil their real car, which had no side pods, and they ended up winning only 1 race out of 23 races. So, yeah, in terms of who's quickest out this shakedown, it does not matter. But for you guys who want to know, yeah, that's the lap time, 1:16.3 from Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari. The second best time, I think, was Lando Norris, 1:16.5, and then Russell, I think yesterday did a 1:16.8 or something like that. Maybe a 1:16.6. I can't remember exactly. But it was a 1:16 point something. So, yeah, there you go. That's what the teams got up to with their fastest laps. But before I come to you guys in the chat, and don't worry, I will come to you guys in the chat to read your comments and see what you guys have to say, I just want to do a quick roundup of the teams in terms of how they've done so far with this shakedown. Because there's one team who you will notice I've not talked about so far, who did not show up to the shakedown. There is a bit to talk about with them, which we're going to get onto in a moment. So let's start with McLaren. Yeah, McLaren, obviously Mercedes powered, and the Mercedes engine clearly proving to be very reliable. And McLaren, probably like Mercedes were able to yesterday, starting to work on the setup and actually dial the car in, which is really positive for those teams to be able to get that chance so early on. Obviously, there's going to be loads of development that comes to these cars in the next couple pre-season tests in the next, 3 weeks, but still good to fundamentally dial things in for those Mercedes-powered teams who were able to do so many laps. Yeah, McLaren, in terms of the reliability side and, all that, all looking good. But whether they've got the fastest car or not, who knows? Obviously, Mercedes have come out of this shakedown with the best, the most positivity, let's say. Obviously, they are the favourites going into 2026 because they are a works team. Already looks like they've got the strongest engine, definitely in terms of reliability and maybe in terms of power. Obviously, we'll have to find out in a few weeks in Melbourne. And also, if you watched that video that I uploaded, what was it, about a week ago, I think it was, where I talked about the Mercedes engine compression trick that they apparently have pulled off with their power units. From what I've heard so far, the FIA have not said that they are going to ban such a trick or maneuver. So if Mercedes are allowed to keep the power unit they've got with that trick in hand, then it looks like Mercedes potentially, even the Ford-powered Red Bulls, who apparently have also done the same trick, might be a step ahead of the rest when it comes to performance. We'll see if that truly is the case again in a few weeks. But again, the most positivity has to come from the Mercedes team. They've just had the perfect shakedown. Done so many laps. The reliability is stunning, quite frankly, at this stage, considering, the 2025 season only finished, 6 weeks ago. Already getting these 2026 cars out on track, the new power units, and for the Mercedes powered cars to complete over 1,000 laps is just amazing. It really, really is. So all the Mercedes powered teams with the engine side in a strong position. From the aero side, who knows? We'll have to find out more as the weeks go on. But yeah, Mercedes looking very, very strong going into the rest, let's say, of pre-season testing. Red Bull, very positive shakedown. Obviously, I don't think a lot was expected in terms of how much laps they could do, given that this is a completely new partnership. Obviously, a lot of risk with the Red Bull powertrain Ford partnership, given that it's not an assured thing to work. So for them to have done just over 600 laps is amazing. It really is. And I think Red Bull will be very happy with that. And I think Red Bull, in terms of the engine side, are probably in a much stronger position, even right now, before we get into the 2 official pre-season tests in Bahrain. They're probably in a much stronger position now than they were in, a few weeks before the 2014 season when we had a big, change to the engines back then. So Red Bull, I think, will be pretty happy. In terms of the aero side, obviously, we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, very positive shakedown for not just Red Bull, but obviously Racing Bulls as well, with the Ford powertrains. And we have to say for Ferrari as well, very positive shakedown. No, moments on track. The Ferrari powered cars all, were reliable, which was good to see. And despite all the doom and gloom coming out 2025, so far, 2026, it's looking good in terms of the engine side. Whether the performance is there, we'll have to wait a few weeks, but it's a positive start. Whether it will actually lead into something, who knows? But at least the engine has proved reliable so far. Because if they had done 500 less laps, at least, then I think a lot of Ferrari fans would be a bit concerned going into this season. But I think the last few days should have given them a bit more optimism going into at least the next pre-season test in Bahrain. Obviously, different conditions in Bahrain, much hotter and tougher for the power units. So we'll see how all the power units cope in those conditions. On the other end of the spectrum, though, Aston Martin, not a good shakedown at all. Arrived late and didn't do that many laps. 66 laps over 2 days? I mean, that's only just about a race distance around the Circuit de Catalunya, but it was done over the course of 2 days. So, a lot of work to be done. From the aero side, it's a very interesting looking car, the Aston Martin. And of course, with it being an Adrian Newey designed car, there is a lot of potential for what the car could be. But as we've said, with these 2026 cars, the power units are going to be a lot more important than they were, say, back in the ground effect era. So even if this Aston Martin is really good through the corners and has a really fundamentally good chassis, if that Honda engine is really lacking in reliability and performance, it's going to be a tough year potentially for Aston Martin. But we'll see how things go. Maybe in Bahrain they'll make a lot of progress, Honda, and we'll be able to get a lot more laps on the board. I really hope so, because I don't want to see them, anywhere near like what they were doing back in 2015. That'd be quite embarrassing if they were like that. Racing Bulls, pretty much the same as what I said with Red Bull. Very positive test. Audi, not the greatest start in terms of the reliability side, but not as bad as some may have you think. I mean, 240 laps, I think it was. That's still good, given that, this is only a shakedown, and in Bahrain, you would hope they'll be able to do maybe double that amount over the first preseason test. So it's kind of wait and see with Audi in terms of, whether they've had a decent start or not, in terms of comparing it to where they're going to be, at in the next few weeks. Nothing great, nothing terrible, just, an okay start. As at the end of the day, as long as we get to Melbourne, if they've got a reliable power unit by then that's what matters. They don't need to go and show everything they've got straight out of the blocks. I mean, of course, for Mercedes, that's been a great thing for them to do as many laps as they have. Same for Ferrari and Ford. But for Audi, because obviously they're the newest of all the manufacturers, they don't need to set unrealistic or very ambitious targets. They're not going to be winning races this year. I think I'd be very surprised if that was happening, and I think all you guys would be surprised at that as well. So, yeah, an okay start, I would say, for Audi. Nothing special. Haas, yeah, good start. The Ferrari engines look good. Alpine as well, good start for them. Mercedes engines look very reliable, and hopefully from their point of view, very competitive. And also for Cadillac, a decent start. For Cadillac, we're expecting them to be the slowest team in 2026, but at least they're able to get out there and do, some laps in the shakedown. They're not, stuck in the garage all the time, like those backmarker teams we used to see sometimes in preseason testing. So, yeah, a decent start for them. I'm sure we'll see a lot more from them in Bahrain. So, yeah, a decent start for Cadillac. But finally, let's go on to Williams, who have been absolutely destroyed in the media in the last few days, because they have failed to show up for the shakedown. Why is that? Well, the reason is pretty simple, and it is quite possibly going to seriously affect their performance in 2026. The car, obviously, with every car going into a new season, you have to pass the FIA crash test. They failed the crash test 3 times, which is quite bad, I must say, for a team that's established and is, they're a lot better now than they were a few years ago, supposedly. That is bad. And also, supposedly, the car was already quite overweight by the point where they were trying to pass the crash test by 20 to 30 kilos. Apparently, they were overweight. And to pass the crash test, apparently, they had to add more weight to the chassis to get it through the crash test. But because of the crash test issues, they they weren't able to make the Shakedown. And it's so bad even that their car reveal is now exclusively an online event where it's basically whatever they show is going to be a 3D render. It's not going to be the real car at all. Very, very embarrassing. I know people will say, oh, it's only a shakedown test. It's not really that important. It is. It really is. Because one, obviously this is a complete new set of regulations, not just for the aero side, but especially for the power units. You want to be getting a lot of, or as much running realistically as you can get in on these new power units for 2026. And Williams obviously have had 0 runs when, all the other teams have had hundreds, or most of the teams have had hundreds of laps already under their belt. But also in terms of developing the car, in terms of understanding the car and where to improve, how to set the car up in a way that gets the best out of the whatever car they've got. They're already quite far behind the other teams. You've got teams like Mercedes and potentially McLaren already starting to work on setup and dialing the car in. Williams have not even had 1 lap. And that really will affect them, especially in pre-season testing and quite possibly the first couple races. Remember McLaren in 2022? I think they missed a lot of running at the start of 2022, or in pre-season testing, they missed a lot of running. They missed, was it like a couple days worth? They just weren't able to get on track because of these really bad brake issues, I think it was. And because of that, they were behind everyone else in being able to set the car up, find the limits of the car, and actually understand how to get the best out of the car. And also, it put them further behind when it came to developing the car, because obviously when you try to develop a car, you need to know where the weak points are to improve it. But if you don't get out there and actually drive the thing, you're not going to know. So Williams, I'm not going to sit here and say Williams are finished. I'm not going to say Williams are, destined to be last in the championship. Because if they are 20 to 30 kilos overweight, which I believe they are, because a lot of reliable people have reported this, and I do believe them, they will shed that weight. I mean, we saw with Alpine a couple of years ago in 2024, Alpine started the year quite overweight. Then they were able to shed it, and then they actually became quite a quick midfield outfit towards the end of that season. So, Williams will shed that weight, but how quickly can they shed that weight without, and not only have they got to try and shed that weight, but also try and understand the car, make it faster, and all of that, all of those aspects. So it's a really bad start for Williams. Not the end of the world, but it's a bad start. Absolutely, it's a bad start. I know there were some people online who, quite frankly, were inhaling copium, saying this, that, Williams, this is actually a secret ploy. They're deliberately not turning up because they've got a really quick car or some, rubbish like that, which is just not true. There's no good reason why you would not show up for the shakedown. Especially when you've got these new power units that you need to really get dialed in and get as many laps with them in testing so that you're sure that what you've got is reliable. So, yeah, Williams are in a bad place. In terms of how bad they really are, we will find out a lot more in Bahrain. Even in the first test, we'll find out a lot more. But definitely by the end of pre-season testing in 3 weeks from now, we will know a lot more about just where Williams are at. They're not going to be probably as competitive as I predicted them to be in my early 2026 predictions video, which, by the way, if you haven't checked that out, go to my channel and go to my videos tab on my channel homepage, I did a 2026 predictions video, which was uploaded probably a couple weeks ago, I think it was. Yeah, I had Williams finishing quite high in that video. I don't really have any confidence in that prediction anymore, even though it's this early in the 2026 season. But we will find out a lot more about where Williams are at and how truly bad they really are when we get to Bahrain, where, the conditions are a lot more representative of what we're going to be seeing in 2026. And I'm sure, we'll get a lot more representative lap times as well eventually, obviously, once we get towards the end of preseason testing. So, yeah, we'll find out a lot more about what Williams have got. One thing, though, which will be an issue for Williams in testing in Bahrain is that Sakir circuit in Bahrain is not the best circuit to really find out how overweight or how that overweight issue is really affecting you, because really at circuits with, the circuit that they've just done the shakedown at, the Circuit of Catalunya, is a much better track for really understanding the weight issue rather than what is a power track in Sakir. So that will be a bit difficult for Williams, but we'll see. We'll see what goes down. But yeah, what a disaster so far. I hope they can turn it round. But yeah, not looking great. Not looking great. And we'll see when they show up for testing in Bahrain. We'll see where they're at. But before I come to the end of this stream, I'm going to read out a few comments from you guys in the chat. Good to see quite a bit of you in the chat tonight. Quite a bit more than I was expecting, to be honest. So yeah, let me just try and read some of the best comments. Hello to Rook, who was in the chat earlier. Good to see you. Hopefully you've had a good last few weeks or so. Hello to Brabham, who saying currently 6 a.m. on Saturday in Oz and in bed, avoiding getting up and going to bed. Let me just scroll down and have a look. Crystal saying the Ferrari livery looks like the 2016 Ferrari livery. Yeah, it does. And I'll be honest, I didn't really like that 2016 livery. I've never liked even I know what the inspiration for it is. Back in the 70s, you had the Ferrari cars that Lauda drove, which had the white on them around the cockpit. I've just never liked it. The Ferrari should be fully red at the end of the day. Brabham saying probably doesn't help. Adrian doesn't want to give it any air whatsoever. Yeah, Adrian is he's not one to compromise with the way he designs his cars. Let me just scroll down a bit more. Hello to Yanni. He says, I heard that it was Max driving Norris's car on that lap. Paul James Squibb says Cadillac should run with a pink livery. Not sure how likely that is, but I don't know what the typical Cadillac livery is in other motorsport series they compete in. But I'd imagine in Bahrain we'll see probably what the actual livery is going to be. Crystal says, if McLaren are not championship contenders, who will F1 hate on this season? Don't worry, he'll find someone. Brabham says block Will on his first comment regardless. Crystal saying rip Albon's F1 career. And Brabham saying, feel more sorry for Carlos. Even when he does well, he still gets dropped and in a bad team again. If it does turn out that Williams this season are going to be really bad, then I feel more sorry for Albon, because Albon has actually put in the hard yards in building this team since 2022. Because in 2022, Williams were the worst team on the grid, and then slowly, got better and better. And things were looking really positive going into this season, given that Williams said that they were really working hard, mainly on this car, rather than the 2025 car, which was a good car that if they had maybe developed a bit more, they could have maybe, maybe not won a race in, but been finishing in the top 5, maybe a bit more. And yeah, so far it doesn't look great. The reason I don't feel that sorry for Carlos Sainz is because he had the option to go to Audi, and they gave him a pretty good offer. I think they offered to make him an ambassador. They gave him a really good offer, and he made the decision that he made. So, and let's be honest, at the end of the day, when it comes to big regulation changes, most likely the bigger teams with more resources are going to be more successful than the ones that, like Williams, a privateer team. So it's not like surely he knew he was taking a risk to a certain extent, choosing Williams over Audi, especially an Audi team that, if you look at, the personnel they've got and the way the team has been built up, it's a promising looking team, and they've definitely got way more potential than Williams. So, he made that decision and he's got to live with it. If Williams do turn out to be, absolutely terrible and towards the back of the field, then at the end of the day, that's his fault. He should have gone with what was, even at the time, the safer and probably better option in signing for Audi. I mean, we all thought he was going to sign for Audi. We were surprised that he went for Williams, because it was just like why would you do that? Even though I thought coming into this season Williams would be strong and stronger than Audi, even if that turns out to be the case, by the time we get to the end of this decade, there is little to no chance that Williams are going to be on the same page as Audi, in terms of Audi being, quicker and more competitive and more promising looking than Williams. So, maybe Sainz chose the here and now over waiting a few years. Maybe that was played into his decision. But I mean, Carlos is only, how old is Carlos? Early 30s, I think he is. So it's not like he's not got a lot of time left. Yeah, he's 31, turns 32 in September. So, I mean, yeah, maybe he would have to wait 3 to 4 years for Audi to become a front-running team. But if he did, he would still be at probably a good level. Not every F1 driver nosedives in terms of their career at that age. Some drivers get even better. Look at, Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso. I know obviously they're much better drivers, but Carlos Sainz is a pretty good driver in his own right. And Brabham saying, but to be fair, he could have stayed at McLaren. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. I mean, back then in 2020, I think it was the right decision for Sainz to leave McLaren, because, I mean, realistically, Ferrari were going to, get to the front of the grid quicker than McLaren at that time, and they did initially for a couple years, and then obviously McLaren figured it out and then became who they became. So I don't think Sainz was wrong for making that decision. I mean, we were all surprised McLaren have become what they've become in the last couple of years, so I don't think it was It's not like it was a real possibility that Sainz just didn't trust McLaren to actually make that jump. But yeah. But yeah, I think we're going to call it there, guys, because I've been live for almost an hour. I was only planning on doing half an hour. Look at that, I've done an hour. Before I go, though, a couple things. One, I just want to end this poll in the chat that I've been running during the stream. I asked you guys, who will win the Constructors' Championship this year? 44 votes, and 30% of the vote has gone to Mercedes. Quite a close vote. 27% for Ferrari, 23% for McLaren, 20% for Red Bull. I agree. I think Mercedes will be Constructors' Champions, but obviously I will be making my final predictions for the season in probably this time next month once we get done with pre-season testing. Before I go, make sure to just stick around quickly because I just want to let you guys know what my plans are for February. Because obviously it's February in a couple of days, and obviously in February we've got quite a bit of stuff going on. So there won't be, after this stream tonight, there won't be on any content on the channel for the next couple of weeks. That is because I've really got a lot of uni work that I need to be getting on with. So apologies about that. There are videos, though, that I've uploaded in the last couple of weeks, which if you haven't seen, make sure to go and check out. I uploaded them in the last couple of weeks. Videos about Audi, Mercedes, Christian Horner, Ferrari. There was another one. Oh, yeah, my early 2026 predictions. So if you haven't seen those videos, and even the ones I uploaded in December, go and check them out if you want to catch up on what I've been uploading in the last few weeks. But yeah, the next couple of weeks, there won't be any content on the channel. And then for the first pre-season test, it appears, from what we're hearing from reliable journalists, is the first pre-season test is only going to be covered with 1 hour of live coverage at the end of each day. So the last hour basically of day 1, day 2, and day 3 for the first test. And then the second test in Bahrain will have unlimited coverage for day 1, day 2, and day 3 of the second test. If that is indeed what FOM are planning for their coverage of pre-season testing, then what will happen with me is the next bit of content I'm going to do here on the channel will be, I'll be live in 2 weeks from now to do what I've basically done today, which is a recap of the first pre-season test. And what we'll do is we'll go through the best lap times, who's done the most laps, and we'll review how each team has done, how they've looked, and just whatever news is going on with all those teams in the first test. Then, obviously, then there's a week's break until the second test. And then if the second test is indeed covered in full by FOM, which I think it will be, then what I'm going to do is on day 1 and day 2, I'm going to do a live stream at the end of those days to review whatever has happened on day 1 or day 2. Where again, we'll look at the lap times, who's completed the most laps, all of that stuff. And then on day 3, which is February the 20th, 3 weeks from now, on day 3, the final day of pre-season testing, I will be doing my first watch-along of the year, where we're going to be live for the final 2 hours of pre-season testing. And we'll just, see them all in, see, what lap times they do, and just, shoot the shit, basically, and just see, what goes down, and see what kind of lap times are done. Obviously, normally the quickest lap times are done on the final day. I'll probably try to have Nib on, who's obviously my usual channel contributor. I'll try to have him on if I can for that final day's testing. And then between the final day of pre-season testing and the first Grand Prix, there's a 2-week gap. Between that 2 weeks, I am going to be uploading at least 2 videos. One is going to be a review of pre-season testing where we go through all the data and also do a quick run through of the teams in terms of how they're all looking. And I'll also give my view on, what I think the pecking order is coming out of pre-season testing. The second video then will be my final absolute predictions for 2026. If there's any more videos that I'll upload in that 2-week break, I'll let you know at the time, during that break. But there will definitely be at least 2 videos in between that 2 weeks of the end of testing and the start of the season. Like I said, a review of pre-season testing and a full predictions video for 2026. And then, first weekend of March, the 7th and 8th of March, first Grand Prix weekend in Melbourne. And make sure to join us for that. Only 5 weeks away. It'll be here before you know it. Cannot wait to get started for the season. Hopefully, it's very competitive up front. When we get to Melbourne, whether it will be or not, we'll have to see. It's still too early to say where everyone's at. So again, we'll have to find out once we get to Melbourne. But yeah, that's been it for this shakedown, the first look at the new era in 2026. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Make sure to smash the like button before you go and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And like I said, I will see you guys next in 2 weeks from now, same time, 7 p.m. UK time, live on February the 13th, Friday the 13th. Bit of a scary day. To review the first pre-season test in Bahrain. So make sure to join me for that. And we'll go over how the teams have done the first pre-season test. And we'll know a lot more about how the teams are looking going into the new Formula 1 season. So until, guys, that live stream in a couple of weeks from now, the next time you'll hear from me. And until all that content coming up in February for testing, and of course, the new Formula 1 season, it has been me, Kazza HD. Goodbye.